Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
And welcome to episode 139 of On the Bench, the podcast for scale modelers by scale modelers, all about scale models. And just like to take this minute to thank all of our wonderful Patreon supporters. It's through the wonderful support of these generous people that we're able to bring you the show. You too can help support the show by going to www.patreon.com/onthebench. and pledge any amount as low as $1 per month. All contributions are greatly appreciated and they just help us with our production and hosting costs. And hello and welcome to the show, and in the studio I've got Ian.
G'day Dave, g'day listeners.
And Julian.
Good morning.
How have we been, gentlemen?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
What's been happening?
Besides work and sleep, not a great deal, unfortunately.
Oh.
I haven't even purchased anything in weeks.
Wow, that's unlike you.
Yeah, because I got an email from B&A stating that a kit I've been after has come in, and then I had a look at it, and then had a look at the price and went, I think I'll wait.
Oh, okay.
What is it?
The new 1/32 scale Hawk 82 P40B.
All right. Was that the $200-ish one?
Yeah, $230.
Yeah,
It's a lot of money.
that's too steep for just a single seat fighter.
It's very expensive, yes.
It is
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah, no, I think I would pass on that too.
Yeah.
That's just an
It's a marvellous looking kit though. It is
Oh,
so
you know why?
insanely detailed.
You know why? They've priced it to compete with Tamiya's stuff.
Yeah.
I
Well,
doubt-
when you look at it, I don't know about the buildability, but when you look at what you're getting in the box, it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, but I doubt it would be on par with Tamiya engineering, like fit and all that sort of stuff. I mean, you look at those kits from Tamiya in 32nd scale, you just put pieces together. They don't even need glue. They just cling together, and you're like, well, that looks like one piece.
Exactly. Yep. And and considering what near the end of this year, Qatar raised Spitfire's coming out.
Ooh.
Now that, depending on how, because like there's, I'm sure it'll have unparalleled surface detail. If it's got like the internal sort of stuff to go alongside it,
Well,
they could ask $250, $300, maybe even more.
We know the Qatar won't come with an engine.
Right.
Richard's already stated that.
Right. So then I would estimate $250 to $300 for that kit. It could be more. Remember, Wingnut wings were not cheap.
No, well, when they first came out, they were very reasonably priced.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're being very optimistic by taking them at their best ever price rather than what their typical price was.
And I'm pretty sure I know their next subject's going to be British too. Going off.
In fact, now that you said that, and now that I've said that, I would say 300 would be the starting point. I reckon, $350 maybe.
Yeah.
Would be my guess.
Look at you guys speculating. It sounds like you're talking about Bitcoin.
Speculation.
Well, I mean, I'm just, there's not too many other cases where you've got the exact same, lineup of people and they've done business before, and that's the price that they work themselves out to.
It's what people are willing to pay for it.
That's right, and we already know that they're willing to pay for it.
Yeah,
and specifically, they're willing to pay for that level of quality, and they have enough of a guarantee of it with the people behind.
Mate, there's people who are out there willing to pay the mega bucks for the new HK Lancaster, not HK, Border Lancaster.
Yeah.
And as we know here, it's just under four figures here.
I saw an interesting post about that.
About the glazings.
Yeah, the glazings.
Yeah, apparently some of them have got a bit of an issue with the glazings.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah.
Very surprising.
Yeah,
but that could be just a very early
Wow.
Molding, we don't know. It's all new. It's brand new off the mark.
The issue was that it's not, they're not particularly clear, especially not for a 30-second scale kit, and one that's supposed to be engineered to very, very high standards. It's surprisingly, it's like looking through a body of water. It's got like a lot of shimmery look to it. It doesn't look super consistent in thickness.
Yeah.
And someone contacted Border about it, and I said, sorry, we already spent too much money trying to fix this, and this is the best we could get it, so this is all you're going to get.
So I'd say that leaves it open for the market of aftermarket glazings.
Well, geez, who's going to do that? I mean, it's... Yeah.
No, there's people printing 3D printing canopies at the moment.
Yeah, I've seen that. But then you have to design it, and then you got to print it.
Yeah.
So maybe it'll happen, but also maybe it won't.
So what you could basically, an idea, this is basically just throwing an idea out there. What they could do is 3D print the frame and vac form the glazing.
Look, yeah, you could do that.
At that scale, I reckon it'll work quite well.
I definitely think that's possibly that's a very valid form of construction in that scale and larger, and I'd like to see it done on some sci-fi subjects that have flat glazing,
Yep.
like say your Star Wars stuff, your TIE fighters and things like that, where you've got flat pieces of glazing, and you could essentially design two canopy frames that fit inside each other and enclose around pre-cut pieces of flat clear.
Yes.
I reckon it could be done.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And I'd like to see it done.
And with 3D printing, I reckon you could probably get it done quite easily.
Imagine
as long as you've got like a little step on the inside where you can actually slot the glass panel in.
That's what I mean, yeah, exactly.
And then
that.
sandwich it between an outer
think
frame.
about you'd have two frames.
Yeah.
An inside and an outside. You could just paint one your exterior colour and one your interior colour. Oh, that'd be so good.
Well, you might have to buy a 3D printer and get in production then, Jordan.
Well, it's interesting you should say that because
I don't have the design chops to do that.
We have an interview coming up shortly with Will Pattison, and we're talking all about 3D printing.
Yeah, that's going to be great, isn't it?
That's going to be fantastic. I'm looking forward to that.
He's a guru, that man. He's a guru.
He is. Julian, what have you been up to?
Not a whole lot. Lately, I just haven't been in the mood to airbrush anything. So I've got a lot of things that are banking up of things I've
prepared.
Yes, I've got like a Warhammer figure. I've got the little boat. I've got a lot of things actually. I've got a lot of things that I really need to airbrush or whatever, and it's not good.
Yeah, well, I've decided I haven't done it yet, and I've been procrastinating about too long. I've got to I'm going to strip the paint off my Key 44 and repaint that.
You should go do that a week ago, man.
Yeah, I know.
What's going on?
I don't know. I just work and sleep, I suppose. When you're doing 10-hour shifts, it doesn't leave you much time when you get home from work to have a bite to eat and try to stay awake before
and go to bed.
Go to bed, do it all over again.
I still reckon you should probably get a figure going. And then finish that.
Well, actually, I've been thinking about maybe doing another Copper State Models armoured car.
Why not? That's quite the mojo rejuvenator for you.
It is,
it?
yeah. Might actually. I was actually thinking about maybe doing the Lanchester. Got the figures for it.
Oh yeah.
So I've been buying a fair few of the Copper State model resin figures that go with their vehicle. And they're nice figures. They're really well sculpted.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's difficult to find very specific World War One. Of the correct faction that goes with your specific armoured car.
Exactly. And that's the one thing one of the things I'm really looking forward to when we get to Omaha is the Vargas scale models.
Yeah, I'm hanging out for that. I've been
some of that really weird armoured stuff from the First World War and artillery pieces. And
yes.
I got that Italian field gun with the big curved chassis. It's just looks out there.
Yeah, 100%.
You're really getting into the World War One subjects, aren't you?
I am, yeah. It's just so Julian's favourite term, old timey.
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of like steampunk and like industrial revolution.
Yeah, exactly.
There is
all that sort of look to it.
So, but yeah, I just need something because I think what it is with the Key 44, everything's going so smoothly, and then I got my colours on, and the aluminium colour looks good, but I'm not 100% happy with it. And after a few weeks' time, damn ghost seams appeared up underneath it, and it's like, oh, damn.
no.
And as you know, with metal finishes, you can't. It's so difficult to like patch. Patchwork repairs. It's best just to, and being Gunz paints, to clean the paint off is going to take 5 minutes. Just put some Gunz thinners on a rag and just it wipes it off, and it doesn't affect the plastic at all. It will probably take away any bits of filler.
Well, what metallizer did you use?
I used the AK Extreme.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder if your thinners will work on that.
It does.
It does. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a previous project where I'm not sure what happened, but I got cracks running through it, like you did, like Alclad did it for a while, where it'd crack. Or if you
I think it's like a heat expansion.
Yeah, like you don't let the black dry long enough, and So in that sort of situation, for me, like why it takes so long is I like to let the paint cure for at least a week.
Right,
2 weeks is optimal. And I should have done that with the Key 44 with the putty.
Right.
I puttied it up. It looked great. It was all nice and smooth. I put it under the light. I put a light on angle on it. Didn't see any dips. Put everything on there. But I don't think I left it long enough, because after about 3 weeks, this putty shrunk a bit and ended up with ghost seams. It's like, how annoying is. And it's kind of put a bit of a buzzkill on the project.
Yeah, I get you.
Because you were nice enough to cut all the masks out, so I'm only using the kill markings as decals. Everything else is going to be painted.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah. And what about you, Dave? What have you been working on?
I'm still slowly sort of ticking along on my Mercury rocket, which is the first Australian rocket which was sent into space. Because the US gifted us a Mercury rocket, and we left satellite on it and set it up back in the 60s, I think.
Was that back in Woomera?
Yeah, days of Woomera, and the Woomera Rocket Range was going to be the space centre for Australia, which is it's still used now. The Woomera Rocket Range is a testing location for stuff. So, so I'm slowly just sort of working my way through that. I'm not in any great rush. I'm just when it sort of, it grabs me, I'll decide to go and sit down and do a bit. The trouble with rockets is it's very much like submarines. You've got nowhere to hide with your seams, and so unless you get your seams down 100% perfectly disappeared, it just ruins the subject. So that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Yeah, realistically speaking, preventing ghost seams from popping back up, and having to leave a safe amount of time before you move on to the next step. There's nothing you can really do about that. You have to leave the project alone for that time. Yeah,
and that's theory. That's normally what I do, but this time I was like jumping.
This is why armor modeling became popular, because there's usually no putty.
Yeah,
right. You just glue it all together and you start painting.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%.
You never need to leave it alone.
Yeah, exactly.
But some things are cool. You can't leave them alone.
That's right. You're in the zone, and you're in your stride. You don't want to break your strides. You just keep going.
Yeah, it really takes a lot of discipline to just be able to just take your hands off something and then either leave it alone or work on something else.
Yep,
100%.
Totally agree.
100%. All right, got an announcement from Chris Meddings that I just want to read out to you. And he says, I want to thank everybody that have brought Models for Ukraine book. The book is now sold out at Inside the Armour, but B&A Model World here in Australia still have a large stock of the book, and you can still buy copies at
Robin Model Bow.
Yeah, in Europe.
Robbie Model Bow. Yep.
And from Guideline Publications, from Frome Model Centre, and also Starling Models in the UK. Chris says, thanks to people that have bought the book. When all the donations are finalised, we will have raised over £18,000 for the disasters
Well done, Chris.
For the Disasters Emergency Committee Ukraine Appeal, I want to personally thank everyone involved in producing the book, buying the book and promoting the book, including my good friends at On The Bench. You guys are the best.
So are you, Chris.
Watch out for the bigger and better Volume 2 later on this year, Chris.
Ooh.
Can we get Chris on again?
Yeah, for what reason?
Oh,
I don't know, just to talk with him.
Yeah, exactly. I just want
It's great to have
just want to grab him over and just have a chat.
Yeah, but if you get him on, you've got to give him a subject, otherwise
Otherwise, it runs off the rails, kind of thing.
Well, you kind of like what we do.
Well, we do that anyway, right?
Exactly. What's so different, Dave?
Yeah, but see, I've got to.
Can't we just have a an open conversation?
Yeah, we can do that. All right.
Yeah, just cut the breeze.
Shoot the breeze.
Shoot the breeze. Yeah, not cut the breeze. Golly.
Oh, gosh. Okay. All right. Let's have a very quick break to hear from our sponsor, SMS Paints, and we'll be back with some...
listen to mail.
Yeah, listen to mail. Sounds good. The Scale Model Supply. Certified Australian made, the Scale Model Supply has a comprehensive range of premium acrylic lacquer paints that have been specifically developed to cater to the scale modeler. Designed to use straight from the bottle, SMS Paints have taken all the guesswork out of airbrushing. Simply shake, pour and spray for a fast drying and extremely durable result. But wait, there's more. SMS have just released the new water-based range, Infinite Colour. It is the ideal paint for anyone who is into miniature painting. And with 48 colours that can be mixed to create any colour you want, the possibilities are, well, infinite. The ever-growing range of SMS paints will suit all types of model builders, be it military, aircraft, train, car, science fiction, or even gunpla. SMS paints will have a colour to suit you. Available now through selected stockists worldwide and online at www.scalemodeler.com.au. Okay, we're back with some listener mail, but before I do that, we've got some really, really exciting stuff to talk about. And the first thing is that Model Expo 2022 here in Australia
is around the corner.
Only 19 days and 10 hours away as we record. Model Expo 2022 is going to be held at the Sandown Racecourse, and it runs from the 17th of June to the 19th of June. Bump in is on the Thursday, the 17th. You have to have your models in on the Friday to be judged, because judging starts Friday night, and Saturday is usual day where it's open to everybody, and on Sunday, of course, there's the famous swap and sell,
where I'll be getting rid of a heap of kits.
I'll put some kits out for sale as well. So do not forget. Now, the interesting thing about this is they have a new online registration where you can go online and actually do all of your entries, and you get a GR code which you then take with you and just flash as you're bringing the model in.
You mean QR?
QR code. What did I say? GR code. The important thing is there's no scrutineers this year, so it is up to you to make sure you have your model entered into the right category. Otherwise, it might cost you a placing if it's in the wrong spot.
Yep.
So, very excited about that. Of course, we're going to be there. We've got our usual spot, and we're going to be doing some recordings from the show, which is always a lot of fun. And it's been, 2 years now since we've been there, so really hanging out to get over there and do that.
Catch up with a heap of friends.
Oh, yeah. And those episodes are always very popular, so we're really excited about that. The other exciting news, of course, is the other big event that we're heading to, which is going to be the Omaha IPMS National Convention, and there's only 52 days and 14 hours and 51 minutes
as we're recording now. That is going to be huge.
Oh, it is.
That is going to be so huge.
I think we've got just about everything already and done.
Yeah, pretty much.
I was going to get print some stickers, so we've got some swag to take with us.
Oh, yes, I know. Same here. I've been buying and buying and buying. I think most of my suitcase is going to be full of gifts with a small section left for clothes.
That's all right. You don't need You don't need to buy. You don't need to take clothes. You just buy socks and jocks over there and just throw them out after a couple of days.
That's it.
Yeah, that's the way to travel. Don't take up space.
Right.
Good idea.
All right, let's have a look at what's in the mailbag. And first one is from Adam Gray. G'day, benches. Adam Gray from Berwick. Oh, he must be nice and close to us.
He is, yeah. It is very close. We could walk there.
We could almost. Been listening for about a year and really enjoying the podcast. As a fellow Victorian, I'm wondering how you feel about the upcoming ban on displaying the Nazi
Hakenkreuz.
and whether this will affect public model competitions such as Model Expo. My understanding of the legislation is that there will be an exemption for educational and historical purposes, but I'm not sure that scale modelling will fall into this category. Looking forward to your comments. So just for everybody else around the world, there's been some legislation that's been brought into Victoria in which it will be illegal to display the swastika.
Mm-hmm.
That legislation is also going to be brought in at state level in New South Wales or Queensland, one of those two very soon also. My understanding, Adam, is from reading the legislation is that models will be exempt because technically they fall under the educational side of things, and whereas this legislation is designed to prevent or dampen down the display of this in public to the point where you're sort of, pushing your political and racist views, hence the reason for them bringing the legislation in. So, as I said, my understanding is it won't affect modelling.
No.
Did you said educational, not historical, or is it?
Well,
the same
historical,
thing?
educational, we sort of fit under those banners because
Right.
when you're producing a model, it's both historic and it can be sort of listed as an educational piece that you're doing. And we had an instance.
It's a tricky thing because when you're thinking of the swastika, the hooked cross, it's the Finns used it during the Second World War.
Yeah, it's used religiously by
India.
The
I think the Hindus.
Yes.
But I think it's flipped 180 degrees to my knowledge. It's the hooks go the other way.
Yep.
But with the Finnish one, it sits square rather than on a diamond fascia.
Yep.
It gets used a lot in Japan. So if you go to Japan, there's like the public maps that says you are here kind of thing, help you get around. They actually have little icons for that marker for the temples, and it's temples everywhere.
Yeah.
There's temples down alleyways in Tokyo, but apparently they took those off or covered them up at one point because too many foreigners were complaining about it.
But under this legislation being introduced in Victoria,
To my knowledge, it's not going to affect us.
No, it won't. And also, religious groups are also exempt as well from it. See, this is designed. I mean, we had an incident about 3 weeks ago. We have here in Australia places called the Hofbrauhaus, which is where you can go and get some Austrian/German type food.
Yes.
And there were some nut jobs there that went there to celebrate Hitler's birthday back in April.
Idiots.
And stood up and had his little picture on the table and stood up and did the Nazi salute and all this sort of junk. I mean, why would you do that?
In public, yeah.
In public.
You can only think that they're trying to agitate things or something,
Yep. Yeah, and that's what it is. It's the legislation's designed for those nut jobs, so yeah, to try and get rid of them or dampen them down.
But no, you should be pretty safe, Adam.
100% to be safe. So I don't see it as an issue at all. All right. Brad Belsham writes in, hey, I know the team has discussed 3D accessories, specifically naval items. How about something on complete kits? The modelling trend, FC model trend, and Vargas scale models are doing some amazing things. They certainly are.
Oh, yeah.
And here is their Matilda 1, which comes from FC Model Trend, and also Bob Semple Vargas tank kits.
That's one I'm really hanging out for.
The Bob Semple.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
The most useless tank ever produced.
Yeah.
I've got to have one in the collection.
Really?
Yep. It just looks weird.
Well, Brad actually sent us a picture of the kit that he's done.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Oh, yeah. It looks really, really good.
Yeah. Even though it was by the looks of it, if you scroll up again, Dave, it looks like it's got the proposed gun, not the gun that it was fitted with.
So just imagine this is like a metal box on some tracks.
It was basically built on a bulldozer chassis.
That's what I like about this World War One stuff. It's so out there.
But it's not World War One.
Isn't it? Not
No, this is World War Two.
Seriously?
Yeah, because New Zealand was worried about an invasion from Japan, and they had no armour, so had to make their own. Now Dave's in more shock.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a stopgap.
It was a New Zealand Kiwi tank.
Yeah.
It's crazy
It was a
Kiwis.
very big gap, and that wasn't going to plug it.
That wasn't going to plug it. It was when they built it. It was just with machine guns, and it was way top heavy because it sits so tall.
Thanks, Brad. Really appreciate you sending those pictures.
We'll be checking them out when we get to Omaha. That's for sure.
So yes, and we're actually hoping to try and get Mr. Vargas on the show while we're over there and sort of do a bit of recording. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, definitely.
Dave Waples writes in, I may have missed it, but here are some interesting ship subjects that are coming out. Black Cat Models releasing the USS Admirable class minesweeper. An example of this boat is the USS Hazard, which is located in Omaha at Freedom Park. I wonder if we can shoot over and have a look at that.
Yeah, definitely.
They're open on Saturday only, and if you want to pay a visit, they have excellent, what's that saying? Excellent docents. I don't know what docents is. Anyway, here's a link to the website. So,
yes. From Starling will be the HMAS Yarra. Definitely got to get that.
yes, so that's another one that's coming out.
Go, that's a what do you call it? A VC.
It is.
A VC ship, Victoria
Yes.
Cross ship.
And Flyhawk Models is a 1/700 scale Zumwalt DDG 1000 kit, which is out. I'm hanging out for the 1/350 scale Zumwalt that's coming out soon. A surprise from Shelf Oddity is a 1/700 scale Mogdor Volta, which is a French destroyer. A little beast sells for about €135, which is a lot of money for a waterline 1/700 scale kit.
Oh, yeah, that's too much for too little.
3D Wild has also apparently got another beauty coming out. It's going to be a 3D printed HMS Illustrious.
Yeah, the early version, 40 to 41.
Yes.
And if it's anything like the little escort carrier that I got from them, it's going to be quite nice.
Well, this comes with LEDs as well, LED for lighting effects.
Yeah,
as
which
well
is
as photo
separate. You get that
etch.
separate to the kit.
Interesting stuff.
And I'll tell you what, I've seen some images of it all lit up. It does look great.
What does it?
With all the lights in the position, yeah, it does look really nice because it's all open underneath. Just shows all the details.
Thanks very much, Dave. Really appreciate you sending through the information, which should have gone in the other segment, but that's fine. Will Edwards writes, hello, Dave, Ian and Julian. My name is Guillermo and only build 1/72nd scale World War I kits. Gee, that's tiny. I got back in the scale models after 30-year hiatus and have been back around for 4 months and already have 52 kits in my stash.
Hey, well done.
Oh, fantastic effort. I am in a unique position where I will never build a boat. I have given away kits that contain photo etch. I will never do the detail justice. And I like to build older kits to find the right subject. So I have alienated all of you.
No, you haven't.
I'm writing to ask a question. As World War I kits tend to be older moulds and hard to find, I tend to get them second hand. I'm wondering, what is the etiquette for selling older kits? Should you inform the buyer if the decals are ruined?
Yes.
I've had a few bad experiences where kits have arrived missing parts or ruined decals without the seller informing me.
Yeah, it's always good practice to, if there's parts missing or the decals are cracked, let the customer know. Because I agree. There's nothing more annoying than getting a kit, opening it up at home, and then these decals are absolutely useless.
Yes,
Missing bits.
and if you're the one, if you said that you're receiving bad experiences where you've encountered such things, yeah, I would be taking that up.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on how much it is, because how much time do you want to spend chasing up an issue that may be only worth a few dollars?
Yeah.
Because I don't know how much these kits that you're mentioning are costing you.
And the other thing I'd recommend is you actually ask the person before you buy, does this kit have any missing parts, and what are the decals like?
Well, normally I never do, because I myself expect the seller to have done the right thing, to be honest. Because as you know, once people start thinking you're dishonest, well, you're not going to sell squat.
Yeah, that's right. Also, quite the niche, World War One kits in 72nd scale. I don't know how wide that is catered for.
Yeah.
It's not a big market.
It wouldn't be a big market.
Yeah, it's very specific. But you may end up having, like, depending on how dedicated you are to this niche, 3D printing might be your friend. I know we've got a guy in our model club who's very into buying 3D printed models online lately in 72nd scale armor kits.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, recently he brought in a, what was it? I think he had a Chaffee, and he had a
He had an Ontos in 72nd scale.
Yes, yeah, an Ontos.
The most useless tank ever designed and built. Right.
Yeah, every time it pops up in conversation, he likes to.
Well, I can't get over how stupid the design was.
And the duster.
No, dusters are cool.
Dusters are cool.
Yeah.
As long as it's the duster where the turret's actually positioned in the middle and not towards the back or whatever it was. The stupid reverse one. Man, I hate that.
And he writes on, PS my display cabinet is a 1.2 metre by 60 centimetre shelf covered in a grass mat to represent an airfield, and you can bet your house that I make noises when I finish the kit and it straps the runway before landing.
Yes.
Give it a go, Julian.
No.
That's great.
I'm not shaming anyone who does. I could. And I might still do that to people I know in person. But generally speaking, I'm not going to just shame anyone for doing that. Just don't ask me to do it. All right?
No worries.
I'm not into that.
All right. Let's hear from the Falcon, shall we? Should we dive straight into that?
Yeah, why not?
What's new in the modelling world? All right. So the Falcon writes in, hi, Dave, Ian and Julian. Not sure if this is news or gossip, but whatever it is, it's interesting. Model Express announced a while back that they would be releasing a 1/144th scale kit of the Douglas DC-8. The kit will now be released by another company, as yet unnamed. Now here's the thing. Model Express, who are a Russian company, have their moulds made by a Ukrainian company, and things have become a bit, awkward.
Yep.
The Ukrainian company has decided it is in their rights to expropriate the moulds as war reparations, and they will release the DC-8 kit as their own. Eastern Express aren't too pleased and are describing the expropriation of the fully paid for moulds as straight up theft. They are claiming it's all about profit, not patriotism. Eastern Express seem to think that, given the situation, legal action would be pointless, but it's clear that they aren't at all happy. Apparently there are other Eastern Express projects that are in Ukraine companies' hands, so this new company will get quite the jump start. I don't know how to go about handling that one.
Oh, I'm staying out of it.
Aircraft News Takeom have announced a 1/72nd scale kit of the Sanger Barrett Silbervogel.
Silbervogel?
Yeah, the suborbital strategic German bomber.
Yes.
There will be two boxings, one with just the aircraft and another one with the aircraft and a Hanomag tractor towing trailers containing Nazi versions of the Little Boy and Fat Man atomic bombs. These kits will be out later this year. Now, this is interesting because technically it fits into space and it fits into my scale range. So, yeah, I might have to pull the trigger on that one.
Oh, well, it was designed by Werner von Braun.
Yeah, well, there you go. Amusing Hobby have shown CAD renders of the cockpit of a presumably 1/48 scale Yak 141 Freestyle. Only two of this Soviet Vistal fighters were ever built. I know that Amusing are fond of kitting projects but you have to wonder how large the market is for something like this. Absolutely some people will be interested, but I'm not sure some people will be enough people to support this particular kit. Sword have announced a 1/72nd scale kit of the Hawker Siddeley HS 125-400 and a HS 125 Series 1 and 3, plus the Domini T1.
I don't know what a lot of those are.
No,
I don't know.
sounds like a trainer.
Well, I remember flying when I used to be in the Air Force Cadets in the Hawker Siddeley 178, I think it was, which was the navigation, two-engine navigation training aircraft. That was fun. Copper State Models have almost completed the CAD files for their 32nd scale Bristol Scout. Looking great, as you would expect, and may well be on schedule for a late 2022 release.
Oh, cool.
Will it be the kit of the year? The World War fans seem to think so.
World War One fans.
Yeah.
World War One fans seem to think so. God dang it!
Drink some water, right? And
Hang on.
Take a deep breath. Clear your mind.
Okay.
serenity now.
Serenity now. KP Models will be releasing a 1/72nd scale Avia B3 Bull. As usual with KP, there are multiple boxings. Military options include the prototype, one in multicolour camo and another in a plainer khaki over aluminium. There's going to be the Racer. Again, 3 options, but if you're expecting something colourful, then don't. All 3 are in military finishes. Seems that Czechoslovakian Air Force was entering air races at the time. The third boxing is international, contains markings for Finnish, Polish, and Romanian air services. KP will be reboxing Sabre Kit's 72nd scale Henschel HS126B1. There's going to be 2 boxings, Luftwaffe with 3 fairly generic looking aircraft. There's going to be a Mediterranean one with 3 slightly more interesting options. A Luftwaffe machine in desert camo, a Spanish Air Force example, and a captured machine in RAF markings. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
KP also releasing another boxing of the 72nd scale Messerschmitt Bf 108s. This wouldn't normally warrant mention, but alongside markings for the Luftwaffe and Romania, there is an example operated by Australia's Guinea Airlines.
Oh, interesting.
It's a very attractive dark blue finish with a large white registration numbers, plus Guinea Airways logo. I thought it might appeal to you folks down under.
Yeah, if it was in a different scale, for sure.
It is interesting. I never knew we flew. We had a Messerschmitt Bf 108.
Well, we had Junkerses in Guinea Airways.
108 is the Typhoon or whatever it's
the
called,
Typhoon,
right?
yeah, the Typhoon, the Typhoon.
I think Edward do a kit of that.
They do in 48.
I've never heard of Guinea Airways.
Yeah. Well, it was started up by one of our few of our ex-RAF pilots.
Post World War II?
Yeah.
Okay. Our friends at ICM are still operating despite all the difficulties. Look out for a new variant of their 72nd scale Tupolev TU2 BAT, a TU T2, which is available in June 2022.
T.
TU 2T.
Why does he do this to me?
It's just the name of the aircraft.
What a stupid name for an aircraft.
And you know, his was really like some of those Russian aircraft, like for example the Su-2, right?
Yeah.
You actually pronounce it Su-2, I think.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. So if you were to do that with this, it'd be 22T, right? Just to mess with you an extra level, I don't know.
22T.
Man. ICM's all-new 32nd scale Yakolev Yak 9 will be available in the guise of the Yak 9T in June 2022. The Yak 9K will be out in the third quarter of 2022. 72nd scale new tool kit promised by Armour Hobby for release in June has been postponed till September 2022. This is disappointing, says the Falcon. Kinetic announced a couple of months ago they would be announcing an all-new 48 scale kit. Well, they have now announced the date of the announcement, which is the 30th of May. People on the forums have discussed what this new subject will be at great length, and have come to the conclusion that the new toolkit must be an A4 Skyhawk. Woohoo! Oh, I'd be into that. The modelling world's hanging out for a new Skyhawk.
It is, yeah.
So now we know positively.
I don't trust Kinetic to
Oh,
be the one
hang
to
on.
make it though.
Wait. Let me read the rest of what he's written. So now we know positively, definitely, it won't be an A4 Skyhawk. What's the opposite of the Skyhawk? It will be that.
I have no idea what the opposite of a Skyhawk would be.
Well, what he's saying is that everyone on the internet is certain that it's going to be a Skyhawk, but that means it's likely that it won't be because people are never right.
Oh, come on, man. We need a new Skyhawk in 48 scale.
That's exactly why we won't get one,
Why?
because we need one.
Hey.
Let's go on to armour news. I love Kit. I hate saying that. It sounds so... Ugh.
It's just company name, mate.
Also, it's not very good grammar, is it?
It's not. I love Kit have announced a 135th scale kit of the M3 Grant medium tank, the M3A3 medium tank Lee. Well, that's confusing because the Grant and the Lee are two totally different things.
Yeah, well, they're probably going to release one of each.
They'll also be doing a 135th scale M48A1 pattern. Oh, that'd be pretty cool. Coming soon from Hobby Boss, 135th scale kits of the Burger Panzer BP-Z3, the Leopard Base BSP armoured bridge layer, and the MAN 10-ton 8x8 drop side flatbed truck. Trumpeter will be releasing a 135th scale Russian T-72B3 with the which is a 4S24 soft case ERA, which is a reactive armour, and also grating armour. So we'll be getting our very first Russian tank kit with a cope cage. I think we all knew that was coming. The box art is interesting. Behind the tank in the background is a massive fiery explosion, and sailing majestically above that, a T-72 turret. Nice to see the box artist at Trumpeter is allowed to have a bit of fun. Asuka are expanding their range of 135th scale Shermans with a M4A2 large hatch version.
It's a 75mm gun version. Yep.
This is the diesel engine type seen mostly in service with the US Marines and also the Red Army. The I Love Kit 1/16th scale Easy 8 Sherman mentioned on the last pod has nothing in common with the same subject being released by Andy's Hobby HQ. That particular 16 scale Easy 8 is in cooperation with Take-On Models.
Oh, so you're going to get two of them.
And Andy's Hobby headquarters are also doing another co-op with Take-On. Their kit is going to be a 1/16th scale quarter-ton utility vehicle, otherwise known as a Jeep. I might not be able to say it, but I can. It's a Jeep.
Yes.
Now, this is really interesting. This explosion of 1/16th scale. This is the year for 1/16th scale kits.
What's all large kits? The kits are getting larger because we're getting older and our eyesight's diminishing.
I know. I think that the Jeep is going to be very well received because a lot of people sort of been hankering for a larger scale. Of
if
that.
you notice that they're often like large scale models of kits that are very small for 135th.
Yeah.
True.
Like Panzer 1s and
True.
And
FT-17s.
A Jeep is pretty small on 35th scale.
Yeah, it is. Still a Take-On, but without Andy this time. Take-On have shown CAD renders of a 35th scale VK100P Mammoth. Thank you. Although it's spelled M-A-M-M-U-T.
Which is the German version for Mammoth.
Oh, there you go. You learn something every day. If, like me, you had never heard of the Mammoth, that's probably because it never got past the design stage. Apparently the Mammoth was being planned as the ultimate super heavy tank, but the Germans realised it was just too big, too heavy, so they decided to go with something much more sensible, which was the Mouse. Meng model haven't quite given up on their armour kits yet. They have just announced a 72nd scale PLA ZTQ-15 light tank. And the Falcon says something very rare from me. Car news.
Ooh.
Tamiya have announced some F1 kits at the recent Shizuoka Let's still get it wrong, didn't
Hobby
I?
show. Yep, keep going.
The hobby show in Japan. The Tyrrell T34 six-wheelers in both
The P34.
What did I say?
T.
Oh, God damn it. The Tyrrell P34 six-wheelers in both 1/20th and 1/12th scales. I'm going to get you guys to start reading this out instead of me all the time.
Which is interesting because they used to do a Tyrrell
Did they-
P36
Yeah, they...
six-wheeler.
It wasn't in 20th scale, though, was it?
I think it was. And I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
well-
you could also get it in the large scale too. So I'd say there's a good chance they probably just re-engineered them. I doubt. Look, honestly, I doubt they'd be the old mouldings. I don't think.
Well,
that's
they've also
tucked in
announced
there.
a 1/12th scale Tyrrell 003 1971 Monaco Grand Prix car. Not being the car guy, I thought this kit might be new, but no, it's the old 1973 model.
Ah,
So actually, none of these new F1 kits from Tamiya are in any way
so they
new use.
So they're just reboxing them.
And finally, we're finishing up from with no naval news yet again.
Yes.
Where is the cormorant when you need him?
That's right.
That's all from the Falcon.
So, Ian, what do you think of the Tyrrell six-wheeler Formula One cars?
It was an interesting design.
Yeah, it was cool.
It was an interesting design.
I think it's uber cool.
You don't think it's as cool as a regular Formula One car?
I don't think Formula One cars are cool, to be honest.
Well, neither do I, but the six-wheeler one is of note.
It is interesting. It is. Look, from what I gather, and I think what I read somewhere is it wasn't all that successful.
Well, no, because you've got 6 wheels touching the ground, therefore you've got more friction, which technically means it goes slower. Or you need more power to overcome that friction.
No, the reason why they designed it that way is because the wheels were small enough to tuck in behind the front wing. That's the big problem with Formula One cars is that you've got these open wheel cars and the air just has to hit the wheel and then get wedged between there and the ground. So if you can find a way around that, it's a huge
Without
advantage.
making it a closed wheel car.
Yeah. The problem though is that because they're smaller diameter, they would spin faster.
Yeah.
In
So
fact, they would spin so fast that they would come away from the rim and deflate early on. They fixed it later.
Do you know a lot about this stuff, don't you?
I know about this specific car quite a bit, yeah.
No, it looks cool.
And that's the reason why it's got those neat little windows on either side of the cockpit.
Yep.
It's so that they could check the inside of the wheels from without moving their head or anything. Because they needed to be able to see if it was coming away from the rim, because it would do that when you're going down the straight.
You'd feel it, surely, on the steering wheel.
Really? Because what would happen is the car would come into the pits and like one wheel would be flat, but the rest would be fine. They fixed it later, but and then other stuff.
Well, obviously it was a crap design because nobody sort of repeated it or copied it.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was the company that was making the tyres, they were making the same tyres for everyone except for just this car, which had its own special tyre.
Yep.
And they decided that they weren't going to continue it because
Wasn't
Cost too
financially.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
and like it was hard to keep up the R&D on that while they're also doing all the regular tyres.
Which they're making a lot more
And
money out of.
and also the fact that like the rear tyres of the Tyrrell are regular tyres.
Yep.
So you've got like way too much grip over time as things getting better and better at the back, and then at the front, not so much.
Exactly, yeah.
But I think it was something like they asked several engineers, like, if you were going to make the perfect Formula One car, what would it look like? And like something like 4 out of the 10 said that it would have 6 wheels.
Interesting.
Very cool.
Very cool.
All right. I think that brings us just about ready to go into our interview.
Yeah.
I know Will's sort of hanging on the line, so
Yeah.
we better bring him in.
Yeah, let's have a chat to our good friend Will.
All right, no worries. Stand by, Will's coming in. I'd like to welcome to the show Will Pattison, who is here to help us talk about So You Want to Buy a 3D Printer. G'day, Will. How are you, mate?
What's up, guys? Down under.
Living the dream, mate.
I like the way you put the Aussie twang on the end of that.
Yeah, that's good, mate. He's practicing.
I practiced. I practiced in front of the mirror for like an hour before we were supposed to start.
Yeah,
Down under.
That's it, mate.
Whenever I hear an American try to do the Aussie accent, it always always reminded of that Simpsons episode where they got close but not quite right of the accents in it, and they got the thing with the boot and. Oh.
I need one of those things where it's like phonetically written out so that if you just read it, you end up having the accent.
You need the big book of Aussie slang.
That one
There
really
you
works.
go.
Well, having it written out phonetically works well for me because, with my dyslexia, that works really well. I wish the entire English language is all written that
Phonetics.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, but we already know you can't pronounce anything correctly, so I'm not sure that would work for you.
That's it, mate.
So for listeners who don't know, and if you live under a rock somewhere, Will Pattison, we've had him on the show a number of times in the past, and so we're really pleased that he's happy to join us again. But I need to congratulate you because you are also on another podcast called the Sprue Cutters Union, and you've just reached a milestone of your first anniversary. Is that correct?
That is, in fact, the truth. I am one of a trio on Sprue Cutters Union with Chris Meddings, whom I know you guys know, and our buddy Tracy Hancock. And yeah, somehow we just made it to our 1 year mark and 24 episodes in spite of ourselves.
It's a good milestone. Get the first one under your belt.
Yeah, 100%. But I must just say,
but we have a long way to go. I mean, how many are you guys on to now? Isn't this your 5th year?
yeah, we're coming out for our 6th anniversary this year, I think.
Wow. Yep.
And this is episode 139, so yeah, we're tracking along.
Damn.
Yeah,
we gotta-
I didn't
we-
realize
we
it had
gotta-
been that long.
Hey.
Yep. I remember back in the day. I remember you starting, listening to you guys from the very beginning. I've been an OG fan from the way back.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we the first 10 episodes, forget it.
Yeah.
Everything, episode 11 onwards is pretty good.
The number of
Yeah.
mail we get in, lots of people saying, "Oh, I just started with episode 1." No, don't do that, please.
We should delete them, Dave.
Oh, I should, but I can't bring myself to do it. I don't know why. It's an interesting sort of medium and genre, and a lot of people sort of do video and YouTube stuff, and there's, they're a dime a dozen out there. And I don't know, doing podcasts, I don't know how you feel about this, Will, but you seem more connected to your audience and it's more intimate than doing just a YouTube.
Yeah, I totally agree. You guys know I have a YouTube channel and I'm on like episode 350 something.
Wow.
And for me, it's always kind of been a one-way thing. Like it's just an outlet for me to share. And I'm stoked if people watch it and people subscribe to my channel, but I've just never been able to get into YouTube as a social media platform. And, I feel bad, but half of the comments that I get, people will ask me questions and I don't ever even remember to answer them or even look at them. I couldn't tell you how many subscribers I have. It's just so I agree with you completely, Dave. I think the podcast is just a way better. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen this where your listeners, kind of feel like it's a community sort of a thing. It's, and you get this sort of two-way thing, and we love it when people send us emails and ask us questions, and it does. Feels a lot more inclusive than YouTube for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So let's dive right into the subject. So you'll want to buy a 3D printer. Now, we had you on the show many years ago, and we sort of touched on the subject of 3D printers, and we were sort of talking about where the future's going to go and rah rah rah. And of course, 3D printing, or the accessibility to the average Joe in the street, has become, well, it's sort of gone leaps and bounds since we were last talking to you about it. And in fact, I think you've even got your own 3D printer now. So
yeah, that's true.
So if somebody wants to sort of, and the cost sort of barrier now is so low, so if somebody does want to dive in and start from scratch, so let's assume that there's somebody out there who doesn't know anything about 3D printing. Let's sort of just give him or her some advice as to where would you first start? What's your first step before you sort of go ahead and lay down your shekels?
By not buying one.
There we go.
No, I mean that. I mean, I'm being kind of cheeky, but I mean that in all seriousness, because my sort of thing with getting into 3D printing that I feel like every model maker should do is, first you need to figure out what it is you want to do with the damn thing. Have a clear idea of what your goal is, and then decide if it's even really in the ballpark for you to own one. I mean, are you even going to use it enough? And if you feel like you are, then my recommendation is, first, buy some parts from somebody else that are already printed. Maybe it's like if you're an armor builder, buy some tracks like so many people seem to be offering now. Or maybe even base an entire project. Like, Julian, if you're building a car, find some cool stuff like that guy from Fireball who does really cool 3D printed stuff. Get you some parts and see what they're like to work with, from a model making standpoint. Because you'll find that they're a lot like resin parts, but not quite the same. And, like resin just tends to be a little bit tougher, and 3D printed parts tend to be pretty brittle. And that may be a deal breaker for some guys, because it can frustrate you. So, once you've figured out if you like working with the parts themselves, then my next recommendation is to figure out how you're going to design those parts. And again, this gets back to how you're going to use the thing. If you're going to just buy figures, from guys on Patreon or whatever, you're going to only print stuff that's already been made, then you don't need to do this step. Just get your printer, go, have fun. But if you're if you're an armor builder or an aircraft builder, and what you really want that 3D printer for is making your own custom parts, you have to address how you're going to get the database. And in most cases, that means you're going to be doing the CAD stuff yourself. And so you got to decide how you're going to tackle that. And once you've gotten used to designing a few parts and getting somebody else to print those for you, and you kind of see how that process goes, then if you're still on board, then go, buy yourself a printer. Or alternatively, just say the heck with it and go buy one. skip all that and just go buy one. It's whatever works for you, but that's what I would recommend.
With the amount of STL files, and what an STL file is, I guess that's little, and I've got no idea what I'm talking about. So the STL file is what the actual instructions of the print subject is, and you just plug that into your printer, I'm assuming, with a USB stick and hit print?
Not quite. You missed a step in there. The STL file is what you have to export from your CAD package.
Right.
Okay. So let's say you design something in Fusion 360 and you want to 3D print it. You have to export as an STL file, and that's a file format that's been around forever. And every CAD package and software like Blender or ZBrush will produce STL files. But before the printer can understand it, you have to run it through a slicer. And what that's basically doing is, imagine that you have a little block that you want to print, and your STL file looks just like a little block. You run it through the slicer, and now it looks like a deck of cards, if that makes sense.
Yep.
The slicer is what's going to create each layer that the printer is going to reproduce. And so that's going to be a piece of software most likely called Lychee. That's the one I use, or Cheetahbox. Those are the two most common slicers. And you got to run it through that, and it will also have instructions in there specific to your printer that will get baked into the output from the slicer. And then you go plug your USB stick in and have some fun.
Well, that's interesting, because I never knew there was that step in there. So you need to have a slicer program to run your STL file through first, which then converts it to the language that your printer understands or is compatible with. and then
And
you shove that in. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a free version of both Cheetah Box and Lychee. So that's, it's not going to set you back any money, but you do have to learn how to use it. It's not as difficult as using a CAD package, but that's also the piece of software where you're going to build your supports, which is a whole subject unto itself when it comes to 3D printing. So
these files that you buy, STL files that you'll buy from the Thingiverse, or I think they're free downloads in some cases, or from somebody who's actually designed let's say a bust of a figure. Not that perhaps uses supports, but anyway, I'll keep going with that analogy. Do those files that you purchase, have they got the supports already programmed into them and worked out, or is that something that you have to do as the 3D printer?
I've seen both.
Okay.
Some of the guys, folks who create these files, prefer to sell them pre-supported. I guess that sort of prevents people taking them and modifying them, because modifying an STL file is not trivial. So sometimes you will get them already pre-supported. And, you just hope that the person who did the design knew what they were doing and they did a good job supporting it, and it works. And some of them will sell you an unsupported file, in which case you can do it, however you want to. Because supports, honestly, it's really kind of a mystic art form.
Well, let's actually explain what a support is for, the really sort of simpletons out there like myself.
Right on. Well, it's a little bit, honestly, it's a little bit of a misnomer, because, supports implies that you're holding the thing up, right? Like you're holding your print up.
Yeah.
And it's actually the complete opposite, because with the machines that we're talking about, the print is hanging from the build plate, so it's upside down. And even though they're called supports, they're really hangers. And what they're doing is they're keeping your print attached to the build plate. And it's an essential thing, because for anybody who doesn't know how these things work, you've got a clear film in the bottom so you've got this liquid resin, right? And you've got to shine UV light on it layer by layer in order to cure it and make it and harden it. And so in order to do that, you've got to shine that UV light through a clear film, and that's in the bottom of the resin tank. So you got this screen that's underneath everything, and then you've got this vat with a clear bottom, and it's full of liquid resin, and then the build plate is up above that, and it lowers itself down until it's exactly one layer thickness above that clear film, and the light flashes and exposes the resin in just the particular area that it's supposed to. And now you've got a solid layer of resin between the build plate and the film, if that makes sense.
Yep.
and now they're glued together. and that's the kind of the thing about this type of 3D printer is you are basically gluing two things together and then yanking them apart and hoping that everything goes okay. I mean, it's basically a process that runs on the thin edge between absolute chaos and pure magic, and it's like Christmas morning every time you get a successful print.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't it be better to be called stalactites then, rather than?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, because they're hanging down from the roof of the build. The build plate being the roof, and that's what ties your object to that build plate. And if they're not configured correctly, you've got this tug of war going on between the film in the bottom of the vat and the build plate, and that clear film has to lose. Otherwise, it's a fail. And if your supports are not strong enough, if they're not properly placed, then the clear film wins the battle, and you have a fail, and you start all over again.
Okay.
Which could be annoying because you could be like a couple of hours into a print and then have to start again.
If you're only a couple hours in, it's a lucky deal. It's usually, yeah, and that's the thing, is you can't really tell, like, especially with little bitty parts, the build plate never comes far enough up out of the resin to where you can actually see if things are going okay. It's just purely a game of wait and see. And by the time you can actually tell if it's happening, you're going to be like 6-7 hours into a build. I mean, it depends on your layer thickness. Of course. But yeah, you just, that's why I print at night. I start them before I go to bed, and then that way I don't even, I'm not even in a position to go look and see, is it working? I just get up in the morning, and if I've got stuff in the printer, then bonus.
Uber cool. So, sorry.
So, I got a question. So, how long does it take for these prints to go through? I mean, give us maybe a few examples of some typical subjects and like how long it might take.
Yeah, because that's like, that's kind of like asking how long is a piece of string. I mentioned that this is like you're going to turn your little block into a deck of cards, right? Well, each card is a layer that takes a certain amount of time to print, and the number of those cards that are in that deck is going to be dependent on how thick they are. And you have some control over that. Obviously, the thicker the cards are, the fewer of them you need, and the faster the print's going to go.
But the less detail.
So, yeah, you will have less detail as a penalty. So you can, it's the old adage. You can have it either fast or good. Pick one. How to answer how long does a print take? Like, I can just give you some examples.
Yes. Well, didn't you do a 30-second scale seat for a P40?
Yeah, that's the one I was gonna reference. So a 30-second seat for my P40 Warhawk, and I was printing that at the thinnest possible layers that I could run in my machine, and it was about 3 hours, if I recall correctly, for that. So not bad. Little bitty parts like the throttle quadrant for the P40, that's done in like an hour. I'm doing some parts right now. As you can imagine, I'm designing a tractor kit.
Surprise.
Surprise, right? And so in 1/35th scale, the tires for that tractor are about 75 millimeters in diameter. See me trying to be all metric system.
I love this. Yes.
I mean, am I like the perfect guest or what?
Exactly.
Get out of here. So 75 millimeters, and if I tilt those things over at something like 40-45 degrees, it's a 6.5-7 hour build. So that should give you some idea.
That's just raised another question. You see a lot of 3D printed parts, and they are sort of tilted over either 90 degree or 45 degree. What's the reasoning behind that?
Ooh, wow. You just wanted to get right into the can of worms, didn't you, Dave?
Well, no, I'm just inherently stupid, so that's.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense because, like, obviously, like, people will see these things and go, "Well, why don't you just print it flat and you
go faster?
Cut a third off your build time, then."
Yeah.
And that is the natural thing to think, because I said it myself a minute ago. The fewer layers you have to have, the faster your print is, and so obviously the less tall your object is, the less time is going to be required. And so it's logical to think, like for my 75 millimeter diameter wheel, well, I don't just lay it down flat.
Yeah.
Then it's only like 20 millimeters tall, and then it's only a 2-hour build, right? Well, yeah, but remember that thing about you can have it fast or good? So the problem is that, going back to that analogy of a deck of cards, okay, is that you're approximating every surface with a series of sort of rectangles. And this holds true not just in the vertical direction, but in the horizontal direction as well. Because the way these machines work is that it's called a masking SLA machine, masking stereolithography. And so what happens is, with that screen that's underneath your resin vat, it's just like a computer screen or a cell phone screen or whatever. It's made up of a bunch of pixels, right? Little tiny squares.
Sure.
And so, like, imagine you've got a curved line you want to print something that's circular in cross section. Well, that circle is going to be approximated by a bunch of little rectangles. Obviously, the smaller the rectangles are relative to the diameter of the circle, the closer that approximation is going to be, right? The same thing applies to the vertical direction and your layer thickness. That's why when Ian was saying, if you have fewer layers, you're going to have lower quality. Well, it's imagining that you're making a beach ball, and you make it out of a stack of round pieces of plywood.
Yeah,
or you make it out of
a good visual representation is when you see people build things out of Lego that are like human sized, right?
100%. Yep, 100%. That's a perfect analogy. Yeah, and so if you lay the object down flat, it just may not look right when you print it. And it can be really subtle, but it can be enough to ruin it. Like with my tires, for example, when I lay those things down flat, the curvature of the sidewall just doesn't look right.
Oh, because it looks that kind of shallow curvature.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly. It flattens it.
It creates steps.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, the steps are always going to be there. The trick is to angle it so that it hides it, right?
Hides the steps, yep.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so, so there's a compromise. I mean, if I turn the thing fully, vertical, well, that prints really good in most, for most everything I want to do, but obviously it does take the longest. And then there's the sidewall lettering, right? That may not necessarily print as good with it standing up vertical. And so you're going to hear people, once you get into 3D printing and you start hanging out in 3D printer groups on Facebook, you just prepare yourself, because you're gonna get flooded with a lot of BS. And one of the things that you're going to get told is, number one, always angle your print. It's ridiculous, because there are, in fact, cases where building it straight up and down is the right thing to do, or where laying it down flat is the right thing to do. And so, and it really just depends on the part. Most of these people who say always angle your print, honestly, are just printing busts, and you just about can't screw them up. And so then the question is, well, what angle? And you're gonna have people who are gonna say, well, if you take the arc tangent of the X dimension and the Y, and you should print at 44.637 degrees, and it's just not. It's ridiculous, and I don't want to put all your listeners to sleep, so I'm not going to explain exactly why it's ridiculous, but trust me when I say that the angle is pretty arbitrary. Like these tires, I just I experimented with several angles, and I ended up liking something in the 40-degree range, and it worked fine. But I have some other parts where I think I chose something more like 15. Honestly, I look at it in the slicer because that's where you orient the part for the build is in the slicer. I look at the part. I look at what I need to get out of the part. And like you think about an A surface and a B surface. So the A surface is the one that you're gonna see. Like that's the one that matters, right? Like in the case of my cockpit, the seat for the P40, the A surface is obviously the one we all see, right? The one where the seat belts are.
Sure.
The B surface, the back of the seat, doesn't matter nearly as much. So I'm going to tilt that thing so that I can put the supports on the B surface.
Right. Yep.
So I just kind of look at it and I, figure out what I want out of the part. And I just pick an angle that looks nice. Oh, that looks good. I'll try that. And the other rule for 3D printing that actually I think is a rule is just assume your first print's going to fail.
Right.
That you're not going to like it. I mean, again, if you're printing busts, you just about can't go wrong. And you're going to print. This is what happens is everybody buys a 3D printer and they go off to Cults or Thingiverse or whatever, and they grab a really cool looking bust and they print it immediately. And it comes out perfect, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, 3D printing is amazing!"
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not exactly pushing the envelope of the medium, right?
No, I mean, but really, busts and figures they're just the ideal subject for 3D printing, because all those wrinkles in the fabric and all those organic surfaces, textures, all that stuff. They just tend to hide all of the problems with 3D printing, using the technology that we use. And so they're amazing and it's addictive. But, what are you going to do as soon as you have a pile of figures that you have no time to paint?
Yes. Yeah.
So and again, this is a real noob sort of question. So is the front of the printer sort of like a photocopy machine, so I can go, I want it at 50% of the size or 100%, or is that done in the slicing program? So, say I've got an STL file and the subject is 72nd scale and I want to make it 1/44th scale. Do I get to go, minus 50 or whatever, or how is that done?
That happens in the slicer.
Okay, cool.
That's the ideal place to do that. But of course, I'm going to complicate things. You did say that I analyzed the shit out of everything, and you're not wrong. So,
but you're analyzing it so that no one else has to, right?
That's
it.
I mean, it's just my nature, Julie, and I can't help it.
I just want to do a little sidebar here because it occurred to me while I'm listening to Will describe all this that. You're not an engineer. You're not a modeler. You're actually a plastic communicator, much like Neil deGrasse Tyson is with stars and stuff. You make something that's complicated and you break it down so that dumbasses like myself understands what's going on. It's really cool. I mean,
isn't that what an engineer does, but with like a communicative component?
Oh no, I've met engineers who are real assholes.
Yeah, well, I've met modelers who are assholes too.
Well, that's true too.
No, I have no. Really? Are you sure? Come on, I've never met one.
Yeah, that communicator. That's a great new title for you. A plastic modeling communicator. Love that.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I think it's because I have to break it. I have to break it down into bite-sized chunks for myself before I can say anything. So it's I don't know. It's kind of kind of an easy way for me to describe technical stuff that I know can get super boring. And so I don't know, I'm really not trying to put anybody to sleep, believe it or not.
So I interrupted you then when I thought of that new name title for you, and we were talking about scaling the subject. So my apologies for the sidetrack.
No, it's all good. So here we go. So yeah, in your slicer, you can scale up or down. And with something like a bust, again, probably that's going to be just fine. No penalty. In fact, I did one recently that was pretty cool. The STL files were only about 15 millimeters tall as they were designed. And I'm like, I can't paint that thing. That's ridiculous. So I scaled it up about 300%. Now we're in business. So that worked. That's a fairly, and going up is always easier than scaling down, because the issue is, like, go back to my P40 seat, for example. So that thing's made out of sheet aluminum in real life, which is super thin as it is. And you scale that down 32 times and it's really thin. Like, we're talking, I think the wall thickness on my seat was 0.2, maybe 0.3 millimeters.
Wow.
So
that is thin.
You just not. Yeah. So, and that is pushing the limits of what your 3D printer can do. For me, I do, I'm designing a lot of parts, and I design at scale. Some people, they want to say, well, should I design the thing full scale and shrink it down, or should I design it at scale? I prefer to design it at scale and try to optimize for the printing process. And I know, as a rule of thumb, that pretty much the smallest feature that I really want to mess with is going to be about 0.2 millimeters, whether that's a hole or like a rivet or, anything like, and there are exceptions that you might get away with something smaller, but in general, it's a pretty good rule of thumb. So point being is, if I've designed that seat to print optimally at 1/32 scale, and it's got the thinnest possible features, and you shrink it down to 1/72, it might not print successfully. So, you kind of have to know what you're working with before you can really answer the question of if it's even possible.
To know the limits.
Yeah, and that's the and that's the advantage of designing your own parts, because right? You've got the database right there, and you're not dependent on somebody else's decision making.
Okay, so your part's finished printing, and for your first time, it's been successful. You take it out of the vat, so I guess you've got a big heap of resin sort of sitting in the bottom of the vat. Step us through the process of, once that's all done, how you go through and clean it all up and then prepare it ready for the next print.
Gotcha. So yeah, when it comes out of that vat, it's all wet and goopy looking because it's got liquid resin all over the outside of it. And so the first thing you have to do is wash all of that uncured resin off of it. And the most common thing is isopropyl alcohol. It'll wash the liquid resins off pretty quickly. And you can do that, just in a bucket, whatever you want, that you have around the house, as long as you got a bunch of isopropyl alcohol, or you can buy what's called a wash and cure station. And most of the major 3D printer manufacturers also make a wash and cure station. And you get a bucket that's got a metal basket in it, and you put your parts in the basket, put them down in the bucket, and turn it on, and it's got a magnetic impeller at the bottom of it that will swirl the IPA around, and it'll just washes your parts. It's super handy. Like mine was $130 here in the U.S. For the one from Anycubic. So what is that, like $9,000 down there?
Around that, yeah. So it's worth it though. Whatever it costs, it's worth it because it's nice. I mean, you put your parts in there, you push the button, you go get a beer, come back,
and pull your parts out. Let the alcohol dry off of it, and then you're on to the next step, which is you got to get it off the build plate, which, like you use a scalpel. That's what I use. Some people use like one of those paint scraper looking things. Whatever it takes, get it unglued from the plate. And then you got to cure them. And that's where the wash and cure part of your wash and cure thing comes in. And that's it's got a UV light, and it's got a timer and a little turntable, and it spins around and looks like a little disco in there. And, 4 or 5 minutes later, your parts are all cured and
that
you're
quick?
good. Yeah. I honestly don't think I ever cure anything for more than 2-3 minutes. It depends on how big it is, whether it's solid. If it's just little bitty parts, like for the cockpit of a model airplane, a couple minutes is more than enough.
I always thought it took hours.
No, not at all. Not at all. And you can even put them outside, let sunshine on them, put them in a window. That'll do it too. That does take longer, but it definitely works. So you don't have to spend money on a wash and cure, but it's just a convenience tool that, to me, it just makes your life a little bit easier, because it's kind of a messy process if you don't have that.
Does the resin part that you've now washed and cured, does it require anything else to accept the paint onto it, like an undercoat, or in your experience, can you just spray directly on without using an undercoat, using an acrylic or whatever else paint you got to hand?
At that point, let's go back though, before you're ready to paint it, you have to think about your supports, because because the stalactites, they're all right. They are still attached to the thing, and some people will say, don't remove your supports until after you cure it. Some people will say remove the supports prior to curing. And I, as usual, will say, it depends. They're easier to remove prior, because they're kind of soft, and you can just cut them off with a pair of good single blade nippers. But when you do it, kind of just depends again on what your situation is. But once you get them off of there, and I should say, sometimes, like, I know this is heresy what I'm about to say right now, it's kind of like painting parts on the sprue sometimes.
Yep.
Sometimes that is the best way to hold them, right? They're already on there, and you got a giant handle and a little tiny part. I paint a lot of stuff on the sprue. Yeah, I did. I said it out loud. The supports can be a sort of a similar thing. You might choose to shoot some primer on the parts while they're still attached to the sprues, and use those as like a handle to hold on to them while you do all that sanding that you're going to maybe have to do, which we should talk about next. But otherwise, at that point, you're pretty much dealing with resin parts, and throw some primer on them, get on down the road.
Sure. All right, you mentioned sanding, so let's take that step now.
Yeah, that's the other thing. If you don't like sanding, then either don't buy a 3D printer or only print figures and busts. I'm just saying. If you think you're going to print, the fuselage of your BF-109 or your F-14 or whatever, and you better prepare yourself, because no matter how thin your layers are, or how small the resolution, how tight the resolution of your machine is, and you should ask me at some point about resolution, Dave. No matter how good it is, no matter how good it is, you will see some build artifacts. And if they're in an area that's visible, you're going to have to decide if you can live with them or if you're going to have to deal with them and sand them out. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a thing. It's definitely a part of life with a 3D printer.
I mean, a lot of these sort of cases, it's, unnatural sort of parts, right? I mean, things like flat surfaces that aren't so necessary. I mean, you have to make them look flat and they're designed to look flat, but because you're going through a printer, it's not going to be necessarily flat. It's going to be close, but it's not going to be there, right?
Well, again, a lot of that comes down to the way that you choose to orient the part. Like, let's say that you're going to go back to that deck of cards, that block. I mean, let's say that what you really care about is the top surface of that block. Like, maybe it's actually an instrument panel and it's got a bunch of little knobs and gauges sticking out of it. We know that's flat, right? Mm-hmm. Well, it makes a lot of sense to print that part perfectly flat, because the top surface of that block is going to be super smooth. The sides are going to be okay, but you don't care about those, right? What you care about is the flat surface,
the visual surface.
Right. And all of those gauges and knobs and things are going to be pretty much perfectly round, and its life is going to be just, all rainbows and unicorn farts. But okay, let's say that thing is more like the deck of cards and there's stuff on the sides of it that's important, right? Like, let's say maybe it's like a gas tank or something, right? Mm-hmm. And now those features that are on the sides are not going to print quite as well if the thing is laying flat. And so, all right, well, we're going to angle it a little bit, going to do a little compromising. So now you're going to have some surfaces that are not going to be quite as perfect, but they're going to be better than they would have been the other way. And so this is why 3D printing mechanical parts is really a lot more challenging than printing just, a bust of a space alien, because you will probably end up sort of having to feel your way towards the best solution. There's not going to be like a recipe for it. And you will also find yourself angling your part according to how much sanding you don't want to do later. That's a consideration. Trust me on that.
And how does the actual material handle sanding? Is it very similar to the old resin parts that used to get from a cottage industry modeler?
Yeah, it's the stuff typically sands beautifully, no problem. I mean, it's so if you've got a bunch of layer lines and you've got you throw a nice heavy coat of Mr. Surfacer 1500 on it, that's when you'll. And this is the other thing, is people make the mistake of looking at a printer that's fresh out of the washing cure and thinking that life is great, but it's almost impossible to see the layer lines in just the resin. And then you put some primer on it and you're like, oh.
So putting the primer on actually shows up then, Will, where the issues are?
Yeah, those layer lines will kind of work for you as a diagnostic tool, because as soon as you start rubbing on them with sandpaper, then all those edges are going to show, and you'll kind of be able to see. It'll tell you how much you need to do. Yep. And honestly, it's kind of, as bodywork goes, it's kind of a joy if it's in an easy to get to area. But going back to that car body, if you've got the hood of a Camaro and it's got a scoop sticking out of it, and now you got to sand in between stuff, and then it becomes not fun.
It's tricky. Yep.
So, yeah, again, everything depends on the part.
Well, and then you could also do something like break it down into two pieces, right? One separate piece for the scoop, but then now you've got join issues, and you got to slice and support two separate pieces, and And then what about do you run into like the shrinking issues and things that resin that we are more familiar with have, where the parts
shrinkage is only a problem on cold days, Julian.
Right. Boom, boom.
Yeah, it's so okay. So now you are really fully into the worm can because when you get into designing your prints at this level, you're fully into doing at least low-level mechanical engineering because, like, let's say it's that Camaro hood and scoop. And so, yeah, because that's totally valid. You may find that the only way that you're going to get the surface finish you need at the end of the deal is to break stuff into separate parts. Like with a good example is, you guys know who Tom Annis is, right?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of the uber cool miniature stuff. He's printing all kinds of cool stuff. And one thing that he did recently was a set of wheels and tires for the Tomcat. And the tires have got text on both sides. And so now you've got a problem with your A and your B side, right? Because unless you print the wheel standing straight up and down, you're going to have a side that's going to have supports on it, and that may not work so good. There was a reason why he chose not to print the thing. He wanted to print it laying down flat, which obviously that means the one side, the text is going to be all screwed up by the supports. So he split the file in half and just made it where you print the same part twice and put the supports on the inside half, right? The face that's going to get glued together, and you glue the two halves together. And now the only thing you have to deal with is just like a kit tire where you have to fill and sand the joint between the two halves, but the text on each side of the tire is perfect. So, that's the thing. So you're going to, if you're designing your own parts, you're going to get into making those decisions. And now you got to decide, well, how much clearance do I need between the scoop and the opening in the hood? And 3D printed parts don't really like shrink per se, but they don't print just magically at the exact size you designed them at either. And again, without putting all your guests to sleep, that has a lot to do with orientation. And you may find that you're going to do some experimenting with, orientation to get parts that fit together correctly. And you're going to have to learn the tolerancing, how much clearance to put, between mating parts if you're going to do even simple stuff. So,
I think I get what you mean. Like, for example, like in our minds, we imagine like two surfaces that are designed to fit together perfectly, coming together, and it's all well and good. But what actually happens is, because you've got two separate parts and you've orientated them at different angles, and then you're kind of ending up with a not quite right surface, and then because there's two combined not quite right surfaces, you may end up with one longer than the other.
Yeah, it'll make an Airfix kit seem really easy and fun.
Yeah, like in everyone's minds, like you design it and you're like, oh, well, I've designed it perfectly. So it's like, when I print this out, it's like a Tamiya kit, but it really doesn't come out that way.
Yeah.
And you realize, that's right. Tamiya are on a different level than I thought.
Everything is just perfect on a computer screen. I mean, you got 27 inches of glorious CAD, and you're zoomed in, and these little tiny bolt heads look amazing, and you're like, oh, this is going to be really cool. And then you print it and you realize that those features don't even show up. And or you've got this super cool assembly of the wing is going to slot into this tab on the side of the fuselage, and it's all going to be great. And then you print it and you discover that, yeah, these surfaces that are supposed to be flat are not perfectly flat. And, it's the Wild West. But, if you like problem solving, it can be a lot of fun too.
With regards to detail and things, like obviously the people out there will imagine themselves like designing up a plane, or at least getting a design of a plane and then printing that out and going, oh, look, it's got panel line, and expecting like panel lines and rivet detail and other things that they're more accustomed to with plastic kits. But is it possible to get that kind of detail at that level, like as what we've seen in plastic kits?
It's possible. Yeah, it's possible. But kind of, again, going back to that thing that I said about the sort of lower limit for feature size being in the 0.2 millimeter neighborhood, a 0.2 millimeter hole is a pretty nicely sized inset rivet at 1/32 scale. You get down smaller than that, and it starts to look a little ridiculous, at least on the screen. And sometimes you have to just accept that it looks you're gonna design it to look a little silly, just so it'll print well. Panel lines, again, 0.2 millimeters wide, 0.1 millimeters is tough. If you want them to resolve and really look good in the printed part, 0.2 millimeters is pretty good. And, on a 1/32 scale aircraft, that looks nice. It's not bad. On a 1/72 scale aircraft, it looks like Airfix. So, it looks like a panel line you could fly an X-wing down. It's just, again, it's just depends.
So on the smaller scales, it's probably better to leave them out and then rescribe them later.
I would, 100%.
I think it illustrates just how advanced injection molding and designs for those kits really are these days.
Yeah,
and that printing is still actually quite far off, considering.
I mean, the bottom line is that you can hold tolerances in tool steel that you're never going to be able to hold in 3D printing. Mm-hmm. And every single injection molded part is going to be a repeat of what's in the tool. And this is why I continue to say, there are some exceptions now that were not there 5 years ago, but I continue to say that 3D printing is never going to match injection molding until we have a complete technology shift and we're actually pushing molecules around, because there's just always going to be things that you can do in tool steel that you're just not going to accomplish with a 3D printer.
Mm-hmm. So we skirted the dreaded word, which was
resolution. Resolution.
Yeah. Talk to us about resolution.
Right. Okay, so this is probably the most. So once you've gone through all this and decided that you're actually going to buy a printer, now you're faced with, well, which one, right? Because there's a lot of them out there. They can become kind of overwhelming. Do I buy, an Antiphoton XYZ? Do I get the 4K or the 8K? How much money is it going to cost me? So the resolution of the printer is, well, I guess the first consideration is how big of a printer do you need, and that gets down to what kind of parts you're gonna make in the thing. If you're gonna just make cockpit detail parts for your model airplanes, you don't need a big printer. It would be a waste of space. If you're gonna do, full 1/6 scale figures that are 8-10 inches tall, you need a bigger machine. So, that's probably the first thing you have to decide. But after that, it's resolution. And resolution can be a little bit of a tricky thing because, it's kind of like digital cameras, right? Where everybody's in this race, more and more megapixels. Well, 3D printing is the same way with respect to resolution. And so the generation of printers that we were talking about 5 years ago were 2K printers. Then came the 4K printers a couple of years ago. And now we're into 8K printers. And so the question is, what does that mean? So you've got a screen that's made of little tiny rectangles, pixels, and the number of K is basically the number of pixels.
How many
right?
thousands of pixels?
How many thousands of pixels? That's the simplest way to put it. And obviously, the more of those pixels you have, the smaller they are within a given screen size. And so, at least in theory, the higher your resolution is. So it sounds great, right? Like, oh man, I need to get the most K possible. Well, maybe, because what it really depends on is how big the screen is. Okay. Think about it this way. If you've got a room that's a certain size and it's got 100 people in it, they're going to be bumping into each other, right? But now if you double the size of the room, but you still only have 100 people in it, everybody's got a lot more elbow room, right?
Yep.
It's the same way with 3D printer resolution. If you've got 8K pixels and you've got a 6-inch screen, your resolution is going to be a lot tighter than if you have 8K pixels on a 10-inch screen. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yep, sure.
So, you have to consider both things together when you're making a buying decision about your printer. Don't just assume, if I get an 8K machine, I'm going to be printing the letters on the fuel gauge of a 1/44th scale Spitfire. Now,
ain't going to work.
Not necessarily. Yeah, not necessarily. And so what you'll see is pretty much every printer manufacturer in their list of specifications is going to tell you what their screen size is in terms of pixels. 4098 by 2580, whatever it is. They're going to give you the XY dimensions of those of the screen in terms of pixels. And if you know the size of the screen, like if it's a 5.5-inch screen, like mine is, you can go through the math gyrations and figure out how big each of those pixels are. Or you can just go a little further down in the spec list where it says 35 microns. And that's the actual size of the little rectangular pixel.
Yep.
And so just to give you an example, all right, like my current printer is an Epax X1 4K, and it has a 5.5-inch screen, pretty small. And if you do all the math, or you just go look on the Epax website, you'll see that the resolution in the XY direction for my printer is 31 microns. And at the time that printer came out, it was the best resolution you could get. So now we've got a couple of 8K machines we can talk about. So the hot new chick on the cheerleading squad now is the Frozen Sonic Mini 8K. And that's everybody's like all excited about the fact that it's 8K. When you do all the math, the XY resolution on that machine is 22 microns. So if you go from 4K to 8K, it sounds like it's twice as good, right?
Yeah.
But no, because it has a larger screen than my machine does. So you only get about about a 30% improvement in resolution, going from 31 to 22. And honestly, I know a couple guys, Tom Annie's one of them, We've got a little group where we share files and look at prints and totally nerd out on 3D printing and Fusion 360. And his prints on that 8K machine are amazing, but at this point, I don't feel like they're more amazing than what comes off of my machine. Likewise, I was watching a review this morning on YouTube for the brand new Elegoo Saturn II 8K, and it's a big machine. I forget exactly what the screen size is. It may be 10 inches. I don't know, but it's an 8K machine, and its XY resolution. Wait, no, it's not. It's not that big. Its resolution is 28.5 microns, so it's pretty close to what mine is. There was another one that they were talking about. I think it was the Mars. Anyway, it was an 8K. It's an 8K machine, but its XY resolution is 50 microns. So
sounds like going backwards.
Right. It sort of does seem like that, but it's a bigger machine. It's designed for printing large scale parts, or like if you're a cosplay guy and you want to print a Mandalorian helmet or something like that, you're going to get amazing surface finish even at 50 microns. And you're not trying to print rivets and panel lines. So again, you don't get sucked into those numbers and think that just because you're that you could buy an 8K machine that it's automatically going to be more amazing, because again, depends.
This has been really super interesting for me, because I'm a real space nut, and there's no modern rockets that are done in styrene, so you have to either purchase from somebody who does it, but the cost of the purchase, so to get like a Falcon 9 Heavy, if anybody knows real space, it's a pretty cool rocket.
Oh yeah.
Or even their new Starship. So to get the new Starship or a Falcon 9 Heavy, to purchase that, it costs you around €800. And
what?
So, yeah. Wow. And that's fully built too, I must add. But still, that's a decent slice, and it's in 70-second scale, so it's a decent slice of money. But for that price, I could buy myself a printer and then print my own sections or my own rockets. I could do the Dreamliner, or I could do a whole heap of stuff, and it's there forever and ever and ever. So I'm really seriously considering, when we get back from our gallivanting around the US in a couple of months' time, to sort of
That's right. Up. You guys are going to Omaha, right?
We are.
We are. Yep. We heard a rumor that you might be making an appearance.
I have hotel reservations. I'll say that much.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I want to. I'm planning to. I'm hoping to. It's a 14-hour drive, but me and a buddy are planning to do it. So we'll see.
Cool. That'll be really good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun to finally meet you guys in person if it happens. I mean, and honestly, for me, between you guys and Sam Dwyer and a bunch of other people that are going to be there, honestly, for me, that's the number one reason that I think I want to go. Other than, just having the whole IPMS national experience and judging and doing all that stuff. But anyway, we're getting off track. Sorry.
That's all right. We can circle back to
that. That's right. We get off track all the time.
Sounds like you don't listen to our show, Will.
So, So for me, I can see the financial benefits of actually going ahead and purchasing it, a printer at some point. But I'm pleased to sort of finally find out that I don't have to be a wizard in files, because you can pretty much purchase these files online and then just put it through the slicer program and bada bing, bada boom.
I'm pretty sure you haven't taken notice of his cautionary tale too much.
Oh, I did. And for anybody who follows Will on a couple of his Facebook pages, you actually put up some spectacular pictures of a spectacular failure that you had with one of your prints that you did recently.
Yes, I did. Yeah, that is the dark side of 3D printing. Because going back to the fact that you're operating with a little tank of goopy, sticky resin. And the bottom of that tank is basically a piece of clear sandwich wrap. And you're gluing that thing to the build plate about 10,000 times with every print and yanking it off. Yeah, sometimes there's either the print sticks to the build plate, that's what you want, or it sticks to the film, which is called the FEP. That's like fluoroethylene polymer, something like that. Anyway, or it sticks to the film and the print fails. The worst possible case, though, is the third possibility, and that is that it sticks to both things. And that means something's got to give. And when the build plate raises back up, it's just going to tear a big hole in that clear film, which means your tank of resin can now run out all over your printer and your desk and your floor. And yeah, it's a bad problem, industrial level cleanup. And the worst thing is that if the resin runs out the bottom of the vat, the next thing that happens, and the printer doesn't know. It's not smart enough to say, oh, crap, I should stop now. It just goes ahead and flashes the next layer and bakes the resin that just leaked out of the vat directly onto the face of the screen.
Oh.
Yeah. And once you come and do the cleanup and you pry the vat out of the machine and you get everything wiped off, you realize you've got this resin baked onto the surface of the printer screen. And now, like in the case of my printer, if you have to replace the screen, that's a $200 replacement for a $600 machine.
Wow.
Ouch.
That's a third of the cost. It's a bad day. It's a bad day, and so you need to make sure you have a screen protector. And I thought I did. They told me that my machine came with one, and that was in fact not the correct. That was not true. I was very lucky. I had a pretty big blob of resin baked onto my screen, and I was able to very carefully get the edge of a plastic scraper under the baked on material and just pop it loose, and everything's fine. Not even a single scratch on my screen. But it was a close call.
Really good cautionary tale. So that leads to another question. And I'm thinking now about, smells and everything like that.
Yeah, where are you going to set it up?
Where's the best place to set up a print machine like this? Should you have it installed in a tub in case it does leak? Can you put it in your build room, which has got carpet on the floor? Is it going to upset your wife or your dog or your cat?
Yeah, like now my printer sits on a silicon mat that's got little, edges. So, because the amount of resin that we're talking about, I'm exaggerating when I talk about it spilling out on the floor. If you had a huge printer and it had a half a liter of resin in it, yeah, that could happen in theory. But it doesn't take a whole lot to, like I said, ruin your screen, or to run down inside the machine and screw up something in there. So no amount is good, but like with mine now, I've got it sitting on this silicon mat. You buy them from Amazon for like $15, and that'll contain anything that comes out of the machine. But the number one thing is to have a screen protector. And so now what I did is I bought some of that old school clear acetate film, like we used to use for overhead projectors. Yeah. Just cut you a piece that's the proper size, and get it in between the bottom of the vat and the screen, and at least in theory, you should be mostly protected. I've got a little video on my YouTube channel showing how I set mine up. I actually attached mine with tape to the bottom of the vat, so if I get a leak, the the screen protector is basically going to be glued to the bottom of the vat, and I can slide the whole thing out and deal with it outside of the machine. If the screen protector is attached to the printer and then it gets glued to the bottom of the vat, you've got a wrestling match on your hands, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So that's why I did mine the way that I did. And so far, I've run a couple of prints and does not seem to affect anything with the print. Seems to work fine.
And the smell while it's printing, is there a noticeable odor or?
Nah, I mean, if you're used to working with lacquers, it's less than that. It's not going to bother you. I mean, I don't know about your wife. That's I'm not speaking for her, but for you, you'll be fine.
And of course, the surface needs to be 100% level and stable as well.
It needs to be stable. It needs to be stable for sure, but people get super concerned about the machine being level. And I mean, within reason, yeah, it needs to be level. But like my printer, I mean, I can look at it and tell you that it sits low on the right-hand side, but it's fine. Doesn't matter, because all that really matters is the surface of the build plate relative to the surface of the screen. Those need to be parallel as close as possible. But if the machine itself is a little out of whack, no big deal.
Okay, so I think we've just about covered all the subjects except the most important one, and that's sort of on price. And I know, like anything, this can vary. It can be, as your favourite saying, how long's a piece of string? It can be, vary from $600 up to even $500 up to like a couple of thousand, depending on what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So let us down that path, Will.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And it's, I mean, look, regardless, it's amazing when you think about it to be able to buy one of these machines and put it in your workshop for less than $1,000, because I mean, it wasn't that long ago where really good machines were $80,000. And, when I was first kind of on the bleeding edge with 3D printing back in the 90s, these machines were $500,000 and they couldn't do what we can do today for so, we're pretty lucky under any circumstances, but the sort of bottom end of the price spread on these machines is a couple $100, $250, $300, and that's American dollars. So, and that's, like right now, because the 8K machines are coming, you can get a 4K machine. In fact, I think it's Anycubic has just recently been running a special on their 4K machines, and you can get one for $250.
Wow.
At that price, it's just it's impossible practically to resist.
You're struggling, but you buy a top end airbrush for that price.
Yeah, exactly. And when you take into account the fact that Fusion 360 has a free personal hobbyist license that gives you a tremendous amount of creative CAD power. Blender is free. You can get in deep, even if you buy a wash and cure for like $500 total, and have an amazing amount of creative power. Now, if you go up in price, like my machine is the Epax X1 4K, and it was about a $650, $700 machine. And part of the reason that I chose it was because of the ultra high resolution, but it's kind of aimed a little bit more at the dental market, where it's got to be robust for daily use. And like the Epax comes with the build plate already leveled, and I've literally never messed with it. I've never leveled my plate. And that's one of the things where, like, that's the first thing you got to do out of the box with an Anycubic or a Frozen is you got to level the plate. And you'll see guys talking about how they're constantly having to mess with that. I've never with mine. And that was a consideration for me. Most of these machines have this whole, like orange or red plastic cover that you have to lift clear off of the machine to get to the build chamber, which is fine. But I wanted mine is enclosed in sheet metal, and it kind of has a flip top lid, like a door that you flip up, and it stays up. and that works better for me. And I was willing to pay for that. So, again, you kind of have to decide what you want out of it. But on average, you should be able to get a really good 4K machine right now for $300, and you add in the wash and cure, and you can be all in for 500 or less American. I believe the price on the the Frozen Sonic Mini 8K, I think it's up around $650. And the problem there is getting one. Like Tom waited for months to get his, and he's trying to get a second one because he's doing production on his, and he's got no idea when he's going to get his other one in. So if you want one right now, you pretty much are going to be forced into the 4K part of the market. But there's good machines out there. I love my ePacks. Another reason that I bought ePacks is because they actually have an office here in the United States, and I can call them. I can get them on the phone. In fact, I've had to a couple of times, and they do like video chat customer support, which is nice because they come up on your phone. They do a Google Meet, and you got them on your phone right there by your printer. Like when I had the meltdown, I called them up. I was like, okay, what do I need to know about getting the resin off my screen? And they were fantastic. But that's also, right here in the United States. Frozen, Anycubic, you're not going to get those guys on the phone, but it may not matter. So again, you just kind of have to weigh everything in terms of what kind of parts you want to build, how big you want to build, and what kind of customer support you want. But it's tough to go wrong. I would say that.
What is the cost of resin?
So that's a really good question that not a lot of people ask, because resin is absolutely a consumable with these machines.
Right,
yeah, and you will burn through some resin. So I have used two different kinds of resin at this point, and they are both in the neighborhood of $40 to $50 for a kilogram, 1 liter, basically. If that gives you any idea. Yes. My favorite resin, at least the one I've been using, what a lot of us are using, is one from Anycubic called Craftsman, and it's finicky, like getting it dialed in, because every one of these resins, they're all the same, but yet different. They're like, it's very much like paint. You kind of have to get dialed in with your machine and your resin and your sort of setup, and that can be a bit frustrating. And Anycubic Craftsman is a little finicky up front, but once you get it dialed in, it really is a pretty sweet resin. And I just got a special deal on it where somebody on eBay was selling a bunch of it for half price. So nice. I stocked up. Yeah.
Does it last a while? Or I know it depends how much you use it, but
right. But I don't think there's really a shelf life per se. It comes in light, fast bottles. And you got to shake it because the pigment will settle to the bottom.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, there's not really a shelf life on it.
Well, that leads me to the question: is there a shelf life? Because you hear stories about resin potentially being quite brittle. So, what's the long-term lifespan of the model once you've sort of painted it and finished it?
Man, Dave, this is why you're the podfather, man. You got all the good questions. This is top shelf journalism right now. That is, to me, kind of the big unknown.
Because it's so new.
Because we haven't really had time for some of these questions to be answered. I feel like that if the parts are covered in paint, they're fine, just like any other resin part would be. But like I've got a couple of things that have been sitting in the window of my studio, and they've gotten pretty brittle, even though they were already cured. even though, so there's that. The other thing that I worry about is, like, I don't know if you guys remember a couple of months ago, there's a detail parts outfit in China that was producing some 3D printed landing gear for either the MiG-29 or Su-27. Do you guys remember that? Did you see those?
Yeah.
Just gorgeous, like with all the I mean, they were in 1/48 scale, and they had all the hydraulic lines and all the nuts and bolts, just absolutely gorgeous parts, and people were losing their minds. How do I get some? And I'm sort of looking at those thinking, yeah, I don't know how long those are going to hold up, literally, under the weight of a fairly size, especially if it's a kit that's like got nose weight,
Sure.
So I don't know. I mean, and maybe that's just me being an engineer and being overly cautious, but that to me is kind of an unknown.
Well, it's funny. I was listening to the Posses on their latest podcast they put out, and funnily enough, they were talking a little bit about 3D printing, just as a general conversation sort of thing. And one of the guys either knows somebody or actually did it himself. They added a different type of resin, so they got a springiness to the part when it came out.
Yeah, they were talking about Dukes.
That's right.
He's actually in my little Fusion 360 club, and he printed those springs. And because these resins, when they cure, they have their own unique set of material properties, and so some are going to be more brittle than others. Like, for example, if you buy the stock Epax hard black resin, super crisp detail, really sharp, but it's brittle. I mean, it'll break if you look at it funny. Anycubic Craftsman is a little bit tougher, but it has material properties that give it a little less crispness. Like, you get a better surface finish, for example, than you do with the Epax hard black. And then you've got resins from folks like Cereatech that are specifically formulated to be more flexible. And you can mix resins. I mean, as long as they're all the same, and most of these resins cure at around 400 nanometers wavelength of UV light. As long as they say that on the side of the bottle, you should be able to mix them. And so you can kind of tailor. Like, we've got a guy in SMCG named Colin John. He's the dude is just a magician. He's a master modeler. The guy builds amazing car models, and he's like designing his own car bodies and printing them. He's got a blend of resins that he likes because it works really good for post machining on his little CNC machine. I mean, this dude, this dude is an absolute wizard. So yeah, you can mix resins to tailor the material properties if you really want to go down that road. Absolutely.
Cool. Amazing.
Yeah. I think, Dave, if you want to do spaceships, I mean, I was going to say that for really popular stuff like the Starship or the Dragon space capsule or stuff like that, I think there's STL files already out there.
Yeah, there are. There certainly are. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes they're free. Sometimes they cost $10. Sometimes they cost more. It just kind of depends. It is a kind of a thing where you get what you pay for. But generally they're cheap enough that you can afford to experiment a little bit. And if you can't find an STL file that's suitable, then you can think about designing your own thing. But I think for anybody who's into spaceflight models, that's a great option.
Oh, 100%. And that's the one thing that sort of drives me towards it. And Yeah, we'll wait and see. As I said, I'll get back from my trip and I'll count how many shekels I have left after spending a lot of money.
Yeah. I think we'll be going through.
Well, these other two guys are going to go in on it with you, right? So that they can build stuff too, right?
Maybe
the community printer.
Yes.
maybe. Well, that's a discussion I think we have to have off air.
Yeah, you're gonna. I know. Yeah, because the one guy's like, oh, okay, so it becomes a question of whose house does it live at?
That's right.
And that means who's going to run it and clean up the parts and do all that. Yeah,
that's wrong, Lucky.
You know, they're not maintenance free. They're not WYSIWYG. Yeah, so that's why I say still sometimes for some people the best 3D printer is somebody else's.
Yeah, totally agree.
Sorry, I had something else coming in on the top of that then. So it was I forgot to mute one of my tracks. That's all right. So what's the last thing I want to talk about? Oh, yes. So we're heading off to Omaha, and we're really hanging out to catch up with you in case you actually, well, not in case, we're actually hoping you do make it. I think it's going to be a really great time. We've got an action-packed 4 days there. I mean, gosh, we're booked out to go to the museum on the Thursday night. The Saturday night, I think, is a banquet or something that we're going to as well.
Yeah, the banquet.
The big banquet thing. And
I'm not sure about all that stuff. I honestly have not looked into all the different events. I've just been, I mean, I'm going to be pretty focused on having the judging experience and meeting as many people as I can and probably just trying to stay chill because it's going to be physically, it's going to be a bit of a beatdown for me because you guys know I'm pretty disabled, but I'm gonna warrior through it and try to have fun, and I'm definitely looking forward to meeting you guys.
Oh, it's going to be great.
Lots of pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yep, that's one great thing about making a road trip out of it. I can carry the proper supplies.
Well, you're lucky because at least with a road trip you can stop and sort of get out and have a stretch whenever you want. We're stopping at Hawaii first, and then we got I think it's a 5-6 hour flight from Hawaii to Phoenix of all places.
Wow. Okay.
And then we've got a 4 hour layover at Phoenix. And mind you, that flight's overnight, and then we land in Phoenix at 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning. We're going to cool our heels for about 4 hours in the airport there, and then fly into Omaha. We arrive there 5 o'clock in the afternoon on the Wednesday.
You guys are going to be more tired than I am.
Well, I think so, but at least you can stop and get out and have a stretch. We're just going to be crammed in, and I've got to say, having been extensively travelled around the world, your local carriers, man, their seating arrangements are not good.
Yeah, I'll be thinking about you guys. I'll let you know how many strip clubs there are between Texas and Omaha when I get there.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
Well, it's sure been a lot of fun having you on again. It's been, so long since we've had you on last, and
what is this? It's like 4 times or something. Yeah, I think it's some kind of record. But look, I'm always down to hang out with you guys. You guys are always just a lot of fun, and I'm happy to contribute whatever I can, man.
And of course, if anybody wants to catch up and track or stalk you, they can go to a number of different places, can't they, Will?
Yeah, that's true. I'm pretty easy to find, actually. On the old Farce book, you can come on over to the Scale Modelers Critique Group. Always some shenanigans going on in there. And my Facebook page is pretty public, so you can look me up there, I guess. I've got a YouTube channel that's just under my name. If you really, are suffering from insomnia, there's plenty of solutions there for that. On the Sprue Cutters Union podcast, you can hear me say the wide variety of stupid things. And also I'm out there.
And also, you've been published recently too.
Yes.
Yes, it's been.
Oh yeah, you forgot about that, did you?
I didn't forget about it.
Last year. Well, I mean, no, but I just, I don't, it's a super cool thing. I mean, I was, my P40 was in, I forget which issue it was
Plastic
of
Pits.
Air Modeler. Oh, that!
Yes.
I thought, gosh, wow, Chris is going to be super pissed at me. He's going to be like, what about the book, Pattison?
Perfect Pits.
Yeah, there's that. Yes, yeah, the Perfect Pits cockpit book that Chris put together with him and me and Tom Annis and Jeroen Veen, which is super cool. And then Chris's Ukraine book. Yeah, so there was that too. So yeah, I guess been in a few things, but yeah, I'm just doing my thing. I don't get too wrapped up in it.
Very cool, mate. Looking forward to having a beer with you in Omaha in a couple of months' time.
Definitely.
It's going to be absolutely awesome.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, and thanks again for having me on. It's been fun.
No worries. Thanks, mate. Whether you build aircraft, armour, ships, science fiction, cars or figures, the Fine Scale Modeler magazine provides the how-to information you need to take your modelling to the next level. In each issue of Fine Scale Modeler, you'll find clear how-to features on model assembly and finishing written by experts, reviews of the hottest model kits and products, tips and techniques for assembling, painting and finishing, as well as inspiring photos of readers' models. To find out how you can get your copy of Fine Scale Modeler, go to www.finescale.com. Well, that was an absolutely fascinating discussion with Will.
He definitely is a font of knowledge, that man.
Oh, he is.
That was a good talk.
Yep.
I think we covered all the good, important points.
Oh, definitely. Totally agree.
And I think after talking about that, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to pull the trigger on a printer this year.
Yeah?
This year, yeah. 100%. Because
Cool.
it's just so many great subjects that I can't buy either in... Like I was chasing a Titan, and I managed to find somebody who actually manufactures a Titan in 72nd scale for a reasonable price. So I'll pull the trigger on that and purchase that. It's a resin print job, obviously. But, it's some of the new modern stuff is just not done by manufacturers. So...
Yes. I mean, that's what you want to get it for, to cover
Yeah.
subjects that are not done by manufacturers. If you're really into sci-fi subjects and anything figures...
Well, I mean, look, there was that guy who was doing the orthopter from the latest...
There's a few
Dune.
people.
Some of them are looking magnificent.
Yes.
That'd be awesome to do them.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Yes, there's lots of cool stuff. Lots of... like the is it Rosinante or whatever?
Rosinante.
Rosinante, yeah.
From The Expanse.
Yeah, I've seen that done.
Yeah.
For 3D, specifically for 3D printing. I've seen that done.
Planet Express ship.
Right, the Planet Yeah,
That's a must.
You reckon?
And a bender. You need a bender as well
The thing is,
to go with it.
You would have to get like your surface finish like perfect, right?
Well, that's
you would have
that's
to
what
have
Will
it-
said. You got to sand it and...
Yeah, but specifically like most things, like a lot of spaceships, you could get away with a lot of things, but the Planet Express ship, it would have to be like perfectly shiny,
Yep.
glossy, like almost 1950s,
that's-
classic car finish, right?
Yeah, well, it is based off the 1920s sort of sci-fi design anyway. So
like the Jetsons and all that. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, jeez. All right, guys. Sign off time.
See you all next episode.
No worries. Julian.
Yeah. Yeah, that. I second that one.
All right. No worries, guys. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll be back in a fortnight. In the meantime, have a fantastic modelling fortnight. Adios. Well, we sure hope you enjoyed listening to the show as much as we enjoyed making it. And don't forget, there are a host of other fantastic model podcasts out there for your listening enjoyment. Simply go to modelpodcasts.com to check out all the other fantastic shows that are available to you. Thanks for listening.